Tariffs it seems to be all that we are hearing on the news these days. So to start things off, what is your assessment of how the tariffs that are posed by the US and then on the US is impacting world trade as we know it?
As of now, the situation is very much fluid and developing. With the US announcement on reciprocal tariffs, they've given some time for the other countries to respond. And I think how the situation will unfold will really depend on how other countries reciprocate and respond to these US tariffs that they are proposing. So in one scenario, you will have a trade war between countries and regions where everybody will retaliate and raise tariffs.
The worst case.
Yes. So that's one end of the spectrum, which I would call retaliation, where everybody goes down the path of raising tariffs against each other, which really doesn't help world trade.
Exactly.
The way the US proposal is structured, it gives the opportunities for other countries to respond.
Right.
What they're essentially saying with reciprocal tariffs is, if you lower your tariff to the US goods, we will lower the tariff for you. In reality, we could also fall somewhere in between, with some countries choosing to retaliate and some countries choosing to cooperate with the US. So in reality, we have to look at both ends of the spectrum and see how we prepare as businesses, as a country, for such a situation.
Tariffs and trade wars. What's the impact on Sri Lanka? We spoke about all of this and more with Surath Chandrasena. Stay tuned.
For 30 years, LMD has been the voice of business in Sri Lanka, capturing the pulse of the nation's corporate landscape through its iconic covers. Each cover tells a story, from the first edition in 1994 to the present day, narrating key moments, leaders and trends that have shaped Sri Lanka's business ecosystem. Over the years, LMD covers have featured thought leaders, business pioneers and game-changing innovations, reflecting the evolution of industries and the economy. As we celebrate 30 years, these covers represent more than just publications. They are a testament to LMD's legacy of excellence in business journalism and its unwavering commitment to being Sri Lanka's leading voice of business. LMD, Sri Lanka's voice of business, a legacy of 30 years.
Hello and welcome to LMDtv. The topic of conversation today is a world of tariffs, and I'm here with the Group Finance Director of MAS Capital, Surath Chandrasena. Welcome to our show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Lovely to have you. Tariffs it seems to be all that we are hearing on the news these days. So to start things off, what is your assessment of how the tariffs that are posed by the US and then on the US is impacting world trade as we know it?
Well, I would say as of now, the situation is very much fluid and developing. The US has announced reciprocal tariffs, especially focusing on 15 countries, which they call the Dirty 15, looking at the trade balance between the US and those countries, as well as the tariffs for similar goods between the countries. So with the US announcement on reciprocal tariffs, they've given some time for the other countries to respond. And I think how the situation will unfold will really depend on how other countries reciprocate and respond to these US tariffs that they are proposing. I think the US has made it clear that the expectation is for other countries to come to the table and reduce tariffs on US goods.
Yes.
So as of now, with the developments happening, what we can look at is really scenarios, because nobody will know for certain how things will unfold. So in one scenario, you will have a trade war between countries and regions where everybody will retaliate and raise tariffs.
The worst case.
Yes, and then you'll see regional trade blocs emerging. You'll see trade as a whole going down. It can have an impact on these economies because with higher tariffs and lesser trade, you'll see inflation creeping up, consumer spending less, and volumes also falling as a result. It will hit inflation. It will impact the way The economy is managed in terms of interest rates because the expected reduction in interest rates may not happen, and it may even push countries into a recession. So that's one end of the spectrum, which I would call retaliation,
Yes.
where everybody goes down the path of raising tariffs against each other, which really doesn't help world trade.
Exactly.
But the opposite could also happen. You could have countries coming to the negotiation table and lowering tariffs. Because the way the US proposal is structured, it gives the opportunities for other countries to respond.
Right.
What they're essentially saying with reciprocal tariffs is, if you lower your tariff to the US goods, we will lower the tariff for you. So they're putting the ball back in the court of the other countries and essentially saying, if you want to trade with the US, it has to be on terms more favorable to the US.
Yes.
Right now, we don't see the terms as being favorable when you look at the trade deficit as well as the rates. So it really gives opportunity for the countries to come to the table and negotiate. And very much the opposite of a retaliation could happen. You could see, collaboration, and you could see tariffs coming down depending on the response. So you already see India is in negotiation with the US and has indicated that they're going to lower certain tariffs. You see Vietnam is scrambling to lower certain tariffs for US goods as well. So that could be the other end of the spectrum. In reality, we could also fall somewhere in between, with some countries choosing to retaliate and some countries choosing to cooperate with the US. In such a scenario, you will have trade blocs, or the world divided into different trading blocs or unions where they trade among each other. So in reality, we have to look at both ends of the spectrum and see how we prepare as businesses, as a country, for such a situation.
And in these scenarios, like you said, all ends of the spectrum, how are things looking like for Sri Lanka? Which would suit us best?
It really depends on which industry and how Sri Lanka also partners with different countries. I see both opportunities and threats for Sri Lanka. One opportunity is with the trade wars or the possibility of trade wars, you see that sourcing heads or companies or boards really wanting to mitigate their sourcing risk. So previously, if they were only in the Far East or only in a particular region, they may want to mitigate their risk by diversifying their sourcing base and really going into different countries. Because of the particular sensitivity with China, you see some companies who are sourcing from the Far East looking for alternative sourcing destinations. So whether it is to mitigate risk or because of higher tariffs, you may see certain customers coming towards countries like Sri Lanka looking for alternative sourcing bases, which is really a big opportunity for Sri Lanka, because when you talk of volumes, if you take exports, Far East and some of the countries that are in this dirty 15, if you call it, have huge trading volumes, and even a fraction of that coming into a country like Sri Lanka, where the exports are still relatively small, can have a profound impact on our demand, and we would have that opportunity to be seen as a country where they could come to risk mitigate or to diversify their sourcing base. The challenge will be as a recession is also possible, or reduced consumer demand is possible because of higher tariffs and inflation. Especially in our export markets like the US and EU, you may see tariffs really impacting inflation and consumer spending less. So that may lead to a reduction in the overall demand for goods, and that can hurt us or impact us. If you take Sri Lanka to the US is our largest export market, accounting for about a quarter of our exports. And a recession or high inflation in the US, we see consumers then curtailing demand, and if the interest doesn't go down, they have large mortgage payments, your discretionary spend is less. A large portion of our exports to the US is apparel, which is also a discretionary spending category and something they may cut down on if there is inflationary pressure. So you may see demand reductions coming through, offset by the opportunity to market Sri Lanka as an alternative destination for sourcing. So it's really then how does that balance out? It can end up favorably for Sri Lanka because we are a relatively small share of the trade to imports to US, so even a small increase in that share would mean a large meaningful number. There can also be pricing pressure coming towards Sri Lankan exporters. As things slow down in the economy and as tariffs hit, to maintain or to curtail price increases to the consumer, importers will be looking at their sourcing partners or their supply chain to cut costs. So there can be pressure on margin and pricing. So although we may see a volume upside, we may see increased pressure on margin to share some of that burden of the additional tariffs if they do come in.
Surath, if we focus on Sri Lanka a little bit more, I mean, we saw a lot of tax proposals coming in. How do you think these are going to impact the economy, especially focusing on exporters?
Sure. So in the present budget, we didn't see a rate change for exporters except for the service exporters, where they were exempt earlier. Now there's 15%. I think there was a lot of concern around that, whether that will deter service exporters from bringing revenue into Sri Lanka. But I believe it's a concessionary rate, and if you are operating within the country, you should be paying your taxes. We also saw a lot of proposals in the budget to support exporters and to improve ease of doing business. We saw concepts like the single window concept, one-stop shop, custom laws. So we saw a lot of different proposals. The concern really is that we've been hearing about these repeatedly in the budgets, but the implementation either hasn't happened or has been very slow. So the expectation is if we can implement these proposals, it will really help ease of doing business and help the exporters. The predominant concern in the budget for exporters is the removal of SVAT. So they're proposing to remove SVAT from the start of October and replace it with what they call a risk-based refund system. We've had SVAT for a while, and it's a system that has been working very well. They're saying the removal is due to IMF pressure and because of possible leakages. In our opinion, if there's a leakage, you can always bring in an audit, and you can do those reviews without taking away the system. And if there are, we don't believe there are leakages, but if there are leakages and you see a few companies abusing the system or some malpractices, we should take strict action against them. But here it feels like the whole class is being punished for a few students who have misbehaved. And genuine exporters who've complied and who are benefiting from the system will have a cash flow challenge, because now you have to pay and wait for a refund. We know from past experience that the refund mechanism is not efficient. And now if you have to wait months for a refund, it will have a significant burden on cash flows. Cash flows that can be invested in working capital, in growing the businesses. We will have to borrow money, and that will have a significant interest component or interest cost added to it. And it will go against the government's stated objective of making the country a place where it's easy to do business and reducing bureaucracy. So on one hand, we have a set of proposals in the budget saying we want to improve the ease of doing business, but on the other hand, good systems which are already there, which are working, are being removed, and more bureaucracy is being brought in. And we don't have a proven capable system for handling the refunds. It's really concerning because exporters are facing a lot of pressure on margin and on cash flows, and this could be added burden on the cash flows. So the call from all the exporters is to keep the SVAT scheme. Please do all your audits, checks, and make sure that it's governed properly. But going to a risk-based refund system can really have an impact, profound impact on cash flows of exporters and cost of exporters.
It's time now to take a very short break, but we'll soon be back to talk more about taxes and tariffs.
Display your brand message on digital screens at prime locations. The largest digital advertising network in Sri Lanka. Emerging Media.
Welcome back to the show. We're in conversation with the Group Finance Director of MAS Capital, Surath Chandrasena. Whilst we are waiting in this very uncertain and kind of risky situation in terms of systems being taken out, what are your recommendations to exporters and manufacturers on how they can overcome even the short-term challenges of the tax proposals?
Well, from tax proposal point of view, I believe the government should come up with a mechanism where they test any refund mechanism prior to implementing it at scale. But I think the opportunity for exporters lies in how we deal in this world of tariffs, and as exporters, how do we navigate this new world of tariffs. So one thing that exporters should do is really engage with their customers and market Sri Lanka as a destination where they could come to mitigate risk. And really be on the front foot to see how we can take some of that business that's coming out of these countries where it's at a trade war with the US, and really be able to increase our market share and attract new customers. Exporters can also look at mechanisms where they can provide duty benefits to customers within certain frameworks. So for an example, a lot of the exporters of apparel in Sri Lanka use a scheme called the First Sale for Export scheme, which is called FSFE for short. It stands for First Sale for Export, and it essentially enables you to get a duty concession for the customers by structuring your business as a trading house that is separate from the manufacturing entities. And the way the scheme works is the customers in the US can pay duty based on the invoice the contract manufacturer or the manufacturing entity invoices to the trading house instead of the final FOB and freight costs. So that reduces the amount of duty a US customer has to pay, and therefore the importers or the customers benefit without much additional burden or cost for the exporter. So there are schemes like that where we can structure the business where there is a duty benefit for customers, especially in the US. The other one is to have understanding of the changing environment on duties and really track by HS code or by product category what are the duty rates from different countries to the key markets, and structuring your business in a way that it optimizes duty for the customer. Especially if you are not confined to the shores of Sri Lanka and you have overseas entities as well, you can take product categories with higher duties and manufacture it in countries where there's duty benefits to the customer. So for an example, in apparel, usually synthetic product carries a higher duty rate than cotton based product. So when you're prioritizing duty free capacities, you give priority to synthetic because the saving to the customer is greater. So having a good understanding of the tariffs in different countries for different types of products can help you plan your business and position capacities, especially if you have multi-country capacities, in a manner which optimizes duty. The devil will also be in the detail, because in the US they are looking at reciprocal tariffs, but how they implement it is still a question, because in theory US will levy a duty or tariff equal to the country exporting it for that product category. So if a country, let's say one of the countries is imposing 20% duty on apparel, they will also impose 20% duty on apparel.
Yes.
But in practice, you have thousands, hundreds of
Yes.
thousands of HS codes.
Yes.
You have more than 100 economies you will trade with. So in practice, that can be million
Yeah.
plus duty, different duty rates.
Right.
So how they implement it in practice is the question.
It's the question.
And having a profound understanding of that can help you mitigate the duty for your customers, and that can make your country also more competitive.
So talking of being competitive, we're always saying that we have to increase our competitiveness in terms of exports. How are these economic developments, good and bad, and then taxes and tariffs again, good and bad? How are all these impacting our competitiveness?
Sure. So I think one of the fundamentals buyers look for when choosing a destination is stability. And there were concerns post the economic crisis in Sri Lanka on whether Sri Lanka as a country would have economic and political stability. I think Sri Lanka in that sense has made a remarkable recovery, and now we've had elections and we have political stability as well as economic stability, and that's going to be build the foundation for us to attract new customers or new business into the country.
Yes.
So from that sense, it's a big relief, because over the past 2 years, everybody was worried about the country's stability, and we had to address those concerns. But if you look at the tax rates that are prevalent in the country, earlier manufacturers who were exporters used to enjoy 14% rate. Now that has gone up to 30%. Sri Lanka also has dividend tax. So it's a profound impact on the cash flows and the available resources for the company. We're also lagging behind in terms of investments in new technologies. Post-COVID, we were dealing with COVID, then we were dealing with the economic crisis, and we're just recovering. So really the mind time has been on managing crisis versus improving and adopting new technologies. So there's a lot of investment that needs to be made to uplift the manufacturing sectors as well as other sectors, and new technology has to be invested in. And the tax rates right now are high, reducing the cash flow availability for things like upgrading of technologies. When you compare against the region, Sri Lanka has one of the highest corporate tax rates as well. It also has, there's also an impact on personal taxes, because personal tax rates in Sri Lanka are also high. Not only direct taxes, but if you look at the indirect taxes on consumption are also very high. So as a result, we see talent migrating, we see people looking at greener pastures because of the disposable income that they have. So I believe in the longer term, we need to do something to retain professionals and skilled talent and retain them in the country, because any buyer or anybody coming into the country for investment, the first thing they look at is
the
talent. And if your talent is now not in the country anymore, it will be very hard to attract buyers or investors into the country. I was at a forum of a professional body was having an event, and they mentioned nearly 45% of their members are now overseas.
My goodness, that's a big statistic.
So and they can track this through the subscription payments, and 45% overseas. So that really begs the question, what are we going to do in the long term to develop and retain? I think the education system is being revamped, will, I'm sure, develop good quality talent, but how do you retain them in the country? And we have to look at tax and other proposals in order to make sure that we retain talent in the country. The indirect taxes also increase the cost of doing business. So I believe for Sri Lanka to be competitive, the taxes, once revenue collection improves, once the tax net is widened, taxes should be reviewed, especially for exporters, to ensure that they stay in the country and bring additional business into the country, and things like the SWAT scheme, which we already spoke on. On the economic front, I think the economic stability has helped, but now we've had 2 continuous years of the rupee appreciating, and a strong rupee, while it's good for the economy, if it continues to strengthen, it will impact the competitiveness of exporters, because cost in dollar terms keep going up, and we are competing with countries in the region where they see a steady depreciation of the currencies. So export competitiveness will get impacted if the rupee appreciates further, because now the cost structure has gone up, where wages have gone up, inflation has gone up, and if the rupee continues to strengthen, that will add on to the increase in costs that we are seeing.
Lots of opportunities, lots of threats, and lots of things to do. Thank you, Surath.
We've been in conversation with the Group Finance Director of Amaze Capital, Surath Chandrasena. Thank you very much for an insightful interview.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you to all our viewers for joining us. Until next time, take care. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram and X. Thank you for watching and stay safe.